This is no doubt one of the most important matters facing my constituents and one that is raised time and time again. In fact, it's the very first issue I raised in this House after my election in June last year, was the effect of police cuts across Merseyside and the urgent need to tackle the rising tide of gun crime following a dramatic increase in shootings across Walton and around Merseyside. All against the backdrop of savage cuts to police funding, £100 million slashed from Merseyside police budgets, and the loss of over 1,000 police officers and over 200 police community support officers since 2010. That day, I saw a government refusing to face up to the consequences of its cuts. And in the time in between, the stark reality of police cuts has further unravelled, shocking figures showing the biggest increase in recorded crime for a decade. In Merseyside, crime is up 14% on the previous year, a 16% rise in violent crime, possession of a weapon is up 22%, robbery up 29% and burglary up by a third. Figures also borne out by the stories, often tragic, that we see and hear about on almost a daily basis. The first responsibility of any government should be keeping our people safe, but this one seems to have little regard for the people of Liverpool. And last week, the Prime Minister was called out by the UK Statistics Authority. They ruled that the public had been misled by the claim of £450 million extra funding for local forces. What was dressed up as extra funding was, in fact, shifting the burden onto local residents through increases in council tax. And as always, poorer areas will be left struggling, with our ability to raise money locally being far less than the better off areas where crime is often anyway lower. How can that be fair? In reality, real terms funding will be cut for the 8th consecutive year. But more than anything, I think people would simply like to see the Prime Minister take seriously the impact of police cuts and rising crime in our communities, to take responsibility, because the denials we've heard from the benches opposite have, quite frankly, been shameful. As well as police cuts, other cuts to public services are clearly contributing to rising crime. Early intervention, outreach programmes, youth centres and the probation service have all fallen victim to the swinging acts of austerity. Labour has promised to begin to reverse years of Tory neglect by putting 10,000 more police officers back on the beat. But we are much more ambitious than that too. As in health, so too in crime, prevention is better than cure. A Labour government will invest in our communities, rebuilding the social fabric that has so ruthlessly been stripped away by austerity. By dealing with inequality and its social consequences, we can tackle the causes of crime at the root, keep our communities safe and build a more cohesive society based on mutual trust and respect.